Welcome. It's very nice to have you here. I'm glad to meet you. And I wanted to start by asking you about AI in general. I think you said that you don't think the next phase of AI is going to be about assisting people, but it's going to be about agency. Can you
Yeah.
tell me what you mean by that?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. I think what we're experiencing right now is an extraordinary step jump in what technology promises, right? Um, but to understand what agency means and how software can deliver, maybe we should take a step back and understand what were we really relying on technology to solve for us, right? From a very first principles lens. Um, any enterprise software promised an interaction between a user and a database, Mark, right? Let's take an example. If I was wanting to punch my attendance in for the day, I was essentially telling a database that XYZ employee is present at a certain location on that date, correct? Um, but here is what used to happen, right? And to understand this interaction between the user and the database, there are two constructs that we need to understand. One is a user interface, right? For instance, in this particular example, I may pull up my mobile phone and a mobile app that my HCM provider gives me and punch in my attendance. Right? And the second thing that we need to understand is logic, business logic. Right? The software would have hard coded some rules against this particular employee. This software would identify that this employee belongs to a certain department and their shift starts at 9 a.m. in the morning and closes at 5 p.m. in the evening. It identifies whether the punch in is late or early, and then goes ahead and tells the database that this is what was the case. Right? If a particular exception had to be flagged, that hard coded business logic would make sure that the exception was raised. Right? So, two concepts to understand, right? Between the interaction um, that is user and the database, there is a user interface and there is business logic. Correct? What had happened in the status quo in the last 10 years was many user interfaces popped up, right? So here I'm punching in my attendance, but if I was stretching that logic and taking that one step further, if that attendance punch in is being used to compute my pay, and I wanted to know what my pay, and I wanted to access my pay stub, I would have to go to another system, another user interface, right? And rely on another set of business logic to be able to fetch the payslip that I was to access. Let's extend that one step further, right? If I had a question about my pay stub, about how my pay was computed, I would have had to go to another user interface to speak or register my request with the HRBP to help me with this particular request. Now, what we are suffering with is so many different user interfaces that we have to access. All of them come with the baggage of hard coded business logic, right?
Mm.
Now, it seems very complex, right? You have to navigate so many different systems to achieve a simple task, which is I just wanted to look at my pay and understand how it was computed, right? But something magical happened in the last 1 year, Mark, and this has shaken up pretty much every technology vendor out there, and every organization should be paying attention to this step jump, which is the dream of a single user interface is now real, right? All you have to do is go to a conversational interface with an agent and tell it, hey, what's my payslip and how is it computed? The agent or this piece of software is going to ask two questions. One is, do I have the tools to achieve the goal that the user wants me to achieve?
Mm.
Right? And second is, does the user have access to the tools they need to achieve the goal? Right? I could be asking, for instance, my manager's pay. And that may not be information that I'm privy to or I should have access to. So the agent also needs to make sure that the user actually has permissions or access to the action that they're asking the agent to do. And that's all. That's what happened. The agent goes to multiple user interfaces and negotiates on your behalf, either fetches information or takes an action on your behalf and achieves the end goal, as long as it has the tools and the permissions to achieve the end goal. That's the magic that has happened. So all of the baggage we had with multiple user interfaces, all of the baggage we had with hard-coded business logic across multiple systems not talking to each other has now been simplified because this piece of software developed agency and is able to navigate across multiple systems to take actions on your behalf and achieve the end goal, provided you have the permissions and the agent has access to quote unquote tools, right? We can go into a little more detail on what tools are and how they are articulated. But the step jump that we're experiencing is just that software developed agency. It will act on your behalf.
And some of the things you were just talking about sound very simple, but they really add up. I saw a study somewhere that just the context switching between applications can eat up 20% of a person's time over the course of a week. It's huge.
It is crazy. It is crazy that so much time was wasted. I call this the toggle tax, Mark. So every time you have to toggle from one system to another system, you're losing context, you're losing flow, you're losing and what seems like such a simple problem statement, Mark, this dream of one user interface or this dream of unified business logic across the enterprise was very hard to achieve. If you think about it, there was an entire business software category that got built on this. Think MuleSoft, think SnapLogic. These guys existed to connect systems, right? The challenge is a lot of employee productivity gets wasted when context gets lost and business systems can't talk to each other. And that's the promise that agents are delivering today, right? They're able to save that time for you. They don't need you to be there everywhere, right? They're doing things on your behalf, right? All you need to make sure is every business software that you have in your organization or in your enterprise needs to make its tools available for the agents to work with, right? And that is happening through something, a new protocol called MCP, right? And without complicating this too much, maybe a good analogy to think is, you may have your CRM system in one corner that has all of your customer data. You may have your finance system in one corner that has all of your financial data. And you may have your HR system in one corner that has all of your employee data. And you want to execute an action that touches all three of these systems. All three of these systems will have to decide to join the same party, correct? And that party is MCP, right? So it's really just a translation layer where all of the systems can make their tools available to your enterprise agent, and that agent is able to go out there and take decisions on your behalf or make actions on your behalf, right?
Now, Darwinbox just launched MCP Server. And
Yes.
so for someone who's, let me just, okay.
That question, I think there was a
Yeah, no, I'm just going to, I had this minute of him or me. Darwinbox just launched MCP Server. And I wondered, for someone who's not on the technology team, can you tell me about that? What benefits does it bring?
Yeah, sure. So let's take the same logic that I'll repeat that. So let's take the same example that we quoted in the beginning, which is a user wanting to understand how there is a discrepancy in their pay stub. They had to engage with three different systems, all of them disparate and have different business logic. They had to, again, like you said, swivel chair between three systems, losing context and having to follow up on notifications from three different interfaces. What MCP makes possible, Mark, is it makes sure that all of these systems are able to come and speak with each other and make themselves available for the agent to take an action for you. Okay. Let me attempt to answer that question a little simpler. What an agent, we discussed the idea of agent needing access to tools to achieve an end goal, correct? Tools are literally just actions. For example, applying a leave on your behalf is a tool. Okay? Fetching your leave balance is a tool. Right? Fetching an information against an active sales deal that you are running is a tool, which a CRM has to provide. Again, fetching information about a support ticket that you're solving for your customer is a tool, right? If you think about it, all software are just collection of tools, right?
Mhm.
HR is a set of tools that allows you to apply leaves, that allows you to fetch your leave balance, that allows you to access your pay slips, that allows you to look at your benefits. All of these are tools, right? So HR is a collection of about 200 tools. CRM is a collection of about 300 tools. Finance is a collection of about 100 tools, right? MCP is what makes all of these tools available in one server. So now imagine a simple use case which has to touch the HR data, CRM data, finance data, and ERP data is, is possible to execute on an MCP server because all of the tools are made available on this MCP server, right? That's literally all that's happening. This is a playground for the agent, right?
Mm.
And in this playground for the agent, all of the systems are making their tools available on MCP. MCP is just a global standard, Mark, like we had APIs back in the day, right? Application programming interfaces, which would connect two different systems. We now have MCP, and MCP is this common playground where actions can be performed because vendors like Darwinbox go out there and make their tools available for these agents on an MCP server. Similarly, vendors like HubSpot come to the playground and say, hey, we will make these tools available for your agent, for your player. Right? I hope I was able to articulate that in a way where
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. No, I think you did. Let me just ask. There's so much noise around AI right now. There's so much hype, but what does it really take to make these agents work in the enterprise?
Yeah, I think exciting question, Mark. And if I was an HR leader or any function leader in a company, I would first of all ask some very basic questions, right? I would ask, what's a task that takes away time, that doesn't need creativity, and and has no exponential jump in the value that it provides, right? What's a task that's easy to automate, and what's a task that takes away a lot of the time, a lot of the productivity of my employee on a day-to-day basis? I would ask that question first, right? And I would figure out ways to automate that. This is what we were doing, in fact, in what I would call the AI 1.0 uh, era, so to speak, right? But once agents have arrived, they are, like I said, now able to do a lot more of that because AI 1.0 was very limited to individual systems. But agents can now work across multiple systems, right? So now you can actually go back and ask questions around what's a use case that I want to automate. And even if it is across systems, I would prioritize and create an agent for that, right? I would go to my vendors and ask them, what agents can you provide to me that make my job a little easier, that make my employees' time worth more, right? So I would ask those hard questions. I would ask, what can be automated and what is non-creative that can be taken off of my employees' plate, right? Second is know that anything that can be articulated as a series of steps can be achieved with an agent, right? As long as you can articulate a particular starting point and an end point and articulate that there is 3 steps to achieving that, you can automate that through an agent. No matter how many systems you have to touch, no matter how many um, um, workflows you have to build, all of that can be automated, right? And to make agents work for you, just figure out what is it that you want to take off of your employees' plates. and then ask your vendors these questions and ask your IT teams these questions on how do we execute? What's the path of least resistance to deploying agents to solve these problems, right? I would perhaps give you an example, Mark. We work with about 1,000 plus customers across the world. All of them struggle with talent acquisition. Mounds and mounds of resumes piling on, and it's so hard to run through all of those resumes and figure out who should I talk to, right?
Right.
Job descriptions are dynamic. They are evolving so rapidly. So an agent can now go through all of those resumes, understand my priorities. I could just ask the agent, hey, I am looking for someone with Ivy League experience who works on a particular technology, but I also want them to have some sales exposure, either by having worked closely with sales teams or having a client facing role in some of their experiences. This query is extremely easy to execute today, right? What would have been 3 or 4 steps back in the day, right? Simple. I just want to talk to someone who has Ivy League experience and has market facing experience and has project management experience. This query is easy to execute, hence making recruiters' lives a lot more easier and spending time on whether the candidate is a good cultural fit instead of worrying about how to get to the resume that is a moderate 60% fit to my job description. Right?
So with MCP, what can an agent now do inside Darwinbox that it couldn't do before?
Yeah. First of all, Darwinbox is an end-to-end HCM suite, which is a collection of multiple modules, so time and attendance and performance and payroll and talent management and so on and so forth. So if I was to ask, very simply, a query that takes, historically would have taken us multiple hard-coded business logic to achieve. Let's take an example. Maybe, Mark, I think the best thing to do is, let me answer that question again, right? Let's take an example of an employee planning their vacation, right? Um, Here are my constraints. I want to take a 5-day vacation, but I want to make sure that I am maximizing and I'm minimizing the number of leaves that I'm taking to plan that vacation. Right? It's a simple ask. Right? I want to plan a 5-day vacation with the minimum number of leaves. Right? Now, this agent will go ahead and understand my holiday calendar, first of all, right? So clearly, the user is trying to club their vacation with some public holidays. Right? It will go ahead and understand my holiday calendar. It will go ahead and understand my shift that I'm assigned, right? I do a 5-day week, and Saturdays and Sundays are free for me, right? Or, if you're on a manufacturing floor, perhaps a Wednesday is an off for you, right? Basis your shift and so on and so forth. So it understands my holiday calendar. It understands my shift. And then it goes ahead and tells me that there are 4 options in the next 3 months where you can club just a couple of leaves with 3 public holidays to make sure that it's helping you in planning that vacation. But it doesn't stop there, Mark, right? It goes and gives you that option. And then it asks you, would you like me to apply for leave basis whatever option you choose? And then you can say, hey, yes, I would like to do that. And then it asks you a question, what kind of leave would you want to apply? Would you like to apply a casual leave? Would you like to apply an annual leave? And so on and so forth. Which means the agent is also accessing my leave balance and telling me that these are the leaves that are available to me that it can go ahead and book for me. And then finally, I can just go ahead and say, hey, just book an annual leave for me, right? So not only did it identify the best possible opportunities for me to take a vacation, clubbing with public holidays, it understood my shift, it understood my preferences, and it gave me options. And once it gave me options, it looked at my leave balance and told me, and went ahead and took an action on behalf.
Okay. Now, we're talking about tools here and a lot of sort of under the hood kind of things.
Yeah.
Could you sort of, I don't want to say bring it down to me, but how do you convey all of this to HR people or IT leaders, not the developers? But how do you get them excited about this, or at least understand its value?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think it's quite simple. Any technology needs to be applied to business in terms of the value that it can unlock for you, right? And according to me, AI can unlock value in 4 key verticals, Mark. One is it can drastically improve operational efficiency for you, right? That's the first one. Operational efficiency could mean your day-to-day activities. Can I automate them? Can I make them smarter? Right? Can I take the mundane out of my employees' lives and give them more creative work to do, right? More strategic work to do. That's the first lens, right? So creating a workflow on your system back in the day would consume a lot of time. Today, it's just one prompt away, right? Type up, hey, I want to create a workflow for a first-time manager, right? I want to give them an experience where they're prepared for their job. Maybe this includes 4 different steps, right? That orchestration of the journey, an agent can execute for you, right? Mm. The second pillar that can help leaders evaluate the value of these agents is, can it drastically improve employee experience for you? It is such a broken experience, Mark, to have to go and ask questions to an HR business partner or a help desk portal that I have a problem, I need help, and then wait for a 12-hour turnaround time or a 24-hour turnaround time for a resolution for my problem, right? An agent can deflect about 80 to 90% of those queries that are typically hitting your HR BPs. Simple things like I need an asset replacement, or I need information about my benefits, right? All of these things can be taken away from your HR business partners or your employee service delivery teams, hence saving you back, right? The third is, can it make everyone in my org smarter, right? Can it actually help me make better decisions? For instance, you and I have been in situations where we've looked at our teams and said, hey, attrition is rising in my company, right? But that's such a broad strokes metric to work with. What do I take away from it, right? Can I understand it a little bit better? An agent can go out there, right, and understand, and it can do this on MCP, right, Mark? It is able to fetch compensation data, it is able to fetch engagement data, it is able to fetch compensation benchmarking data that some other vendor may be providing, and they've made that available on MCP. And it is able to do that analysis and tell you specifically that, hey, perhaps this particular location, women in the team are feeling like they don't have enough growth opportunities, and this feeling may be coming from their compensation being much below parity against the industry, right? So that's the third pillar. Can I be better with my analysis? Can I make better decisions thanks to my agents giving me a deeper dive of what's working and what's not working, right? And the fourth is quite simple, Mark. Can it drastically improve my talent management? Right? Everyone's struggling with this problem statement. We are in the most volatile talent ecosystem period ever, right? So how do you make sure that every employee has their aspirations registered with you, has a curated learning path that is upskilling them regularly, access to projects and gigs that will help them learn new skills and help them collaborate with teams beyond their regular teams that they work with on a day-to-day basis, right? So operational efficiency, how can you make your admin's life easy, right? Second, employee service delivery or employee experience. How can you make your employees' day-to-day experience faster and simpler? Third is, can you be smarter with your decision making? Can you rely on agents to give you the right information at the right time, the right nudge to be able to be better with making these decisions? And fourth, can you drastically improve your team's ability or your talent's ability to upskill and learn more contextual skills that allows you to sort of future-proof your workforce, right? I would say if you're an HR leader or an IT leader, ask hard questions on how agents and AI can help you solve these 4 problem statements. And that will definitely translate into value for your enterprise.
Now, I think one of the big questions that everybody's asking about tools like this is what's the context, or no, let me start again. I think one of the questions people have about tools like this is really about the relationship between the human user and the agent. Is is this about a partnership between the two of them? Or is this really, at the end of the day, about replacing people with machines?
Yeah, it's a great question, and the anxiety is very valid, Mark. But I want to maybe share a couple of things, right? Anything that AI is doing today, it only learned from us, right? So what AI is doing today is it's great at organizing world knowledge, right? In the last 20 to 25 years of internet, we kept giving internet a lot of information about how we do things, right? What AI is doing is really just utilizing a lot of that information and helping us do things that we used to do back in the day with a lot of effort, and do it simply. So it's a great manager of knowledge. It's not an inventor in itself, right? We're far away from the reality where AI can go. Why haven't we solved intergalactic travel? Shouldn't we just ask AI to solve that? Right? It cannot. That's the reality. We haven't solved it as humans, and that's why AI can't solve it. Right?
Mm.
So it is super important to understand that artificial intelligence is really just augmented intelligence in my head, right? I know we like to fantasize this, and there is a lot of arguments pro and against the rise of technology. But I can tell you this one thing, right? It is just a partner, right? It is something that is designed to help make your life a little easier so that you do things that matter and finally move away from things that drain you of energy, that drain you of what you were supposed to do. You were supposed to think, you were supposed to make decisions, you were supposed to question the status quo and improve the status quo at any point in time. That's what humans were supposed to do, right? And once you find a status quo, rely on your agents to automate that stuff. Leave the grunt to technology, leave the grunt to artificial intelligence. Yes, it's becoming more and more intelligent, and it's able to do things for me that it wasn't able to do before. And that's a good thing for us because it frees up time for us to do a lot more interesting things, evolve our expectations, and job descriptions, and so on and so forth. So we are firm believers that um, AI serves humans, and that's the lens that it should be looked at. I don't think we're if we are on that path, we're far away from what people call synchronicity or general intelligence.
I love actually the term augmented intelligence. I think that's a really great way to put it.
Yeah,
I've actually heard a lot of people use that. So,
yeah,
um, well, listen, Samrat, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope someday you'll come back and we can talk more about this. But it was great to meet you, and thank you for being here.
absolutely, man. This was a lot of fun. I hope I was able to do justice to the questions that you asked, and yeah, super excited to do this, and I'd love to do this again.